A pattern so precise, so devastating that it has erased 3 global superpowers from existence in the last 500 years. Not weaken them, erase them. And right now, in 2025, the United States is following that exact pattern, step by step, like an actor who doesn't realize they're reading a script that always ends the same way. Stage 5 of 7 is complete. 2 stages remain. And if history is any guide, we have far less time than anyone wants to believe. I'm going to show you something that will fundamentally change how you see the world around you. In 1590, Spain owned half the planet's gold and silver. Their galleons ruled the seas. Their currency was accepted from Manila to Madrid. 80 years later, beggars filled their streets. Their treasury was empty, and their empire was a corpse still twitching. In 1914, the British Empire stretched across a quarter of the Earth's surface. 400 million people lived under the Union Jack. The pound sterling was God's own currency. 40 years later, it was all gone. The empire, the currency, the power vanished like smoke. In 1991, the Soviet Union had 30,000 nuclear weapons and satellites circling the globe. 900 days later, it didn't exist, not defeated in war. It simply imploded from economic collapse. 3 superpowers, 3 complete annihilations. 1 pattern, 7 stages, and America just finished stage 5. Now here's where this gets personal. You're living through this, your savings, your future, your children's world, all of it sits on a foundation that's cracking in real time. And almost nobody sees it because empire collapse doesn't look like what you think. There's no invasion, no bombs, no dramatic final battle. It's quieter, more insidious, and by the time people realize what's happening, it's already too late to stop. Let me explain how it actually works. An empire doesn't fall because it loses a war. It falls because it exhausts itself trying to be everywhere, control everything, promise the impossible. Military bases in 150 countries, wars on 3 continents, alliances that demand protection, debts that can never be repaid. At first, nothing seems wrong. The currency still buys things. The military still wins. Politicians still make grand promises. But underground, invisible to almost everyone, the structure is rotting. Money flows to the wrong places. Factories close. The smartest people start quietly leaving. Then something shifts. Allies begin making backup plans. Enemies probe for weakness. Trading partners whisper about alternatives. The reserve currency, once demanded by everyone on Earth, starts coming home. And this is the moment of terror, when every advantage that made you dominant transforms into a vulnerability. All those dollars the world was holding, they flood back, igniting inflation. All those military bases, they become anchors dragging you underwater. All those promises, they turn into lies. This isn't theory. This happened to Spain. It happened to Britain. It happened to the Soviet Union. And it happened because they made the exact decisions we're making right now, convinced they were special, certain the rules didn't apply to them. They were wrong. We're about to find out we are too. Let's go back to where this pattern first revealed itself. Spain, 1500s. After Columbus stumbled into the Americas, Spain became something the world had never seen, a true global superpower. They crushed the Aztecs, obliterated the Incas, and seized control of silver mines so rich they seemed infinite. By 1550, Spanish ships were hauling 200 tons of silver home every single year. By 1600, 400 tons. Spain didn't just have money. They were money. The Spanish real became the world's currency. Everyone needed Spanish silver. Everyone wanted it, and Spain believed this made them untouchable, eternal, invincible. King Philip I sat on a throne of silver and decided to buy the world. Stage 1 arrived like a seductive whisper, military overextension. Spain fought everyone, everywhere, all at once. The Ottoman Empire in the Mediterranean, France and Italy, Protestant rebels in the Netherlands who refused to submit, England's upstart navy, wars in the Philippines, wars in the Americas. By 1580, Spanish troops were dying on 4 continents simultaneously. The cost, unimaginable. Half of every peso collected in taxes went straight to the military. And still, it wasn't enough. Does this sound familiar yet? It should. Stage 2 came next, inevitable as dawn currency debasement. The Spanish crown looked at its bills, looked at its tax revenue, and did what every failing empire does when reality becomes inconvenient. They cheated. They started mixing copper into their silver coins. A coin stamped pure silver became 50% copper, then 75%, then barely silver at all. But the face value, that stayed the same. The government insisted a debased coin was worth what a pure coin used to be worth. Merchants weren't stupid. They stopped accepting them at face value. Prices exploded. The empire that owned all the silver in the world destroyed the value of silver itself. Then stage 3 tightened around Spain's throat. The debt spiral. Spain borrowed from Italian bankers, German bankers, anyone with gold to lend. By 1557, barely 20 years into Philip's reign, Spain declared bankruptcy. They couldn't pay. They defaulted, restructured reforms, and immediately went back to borrowing. They declared bankruptcy again in 1560, again in 1575, again in 1596. 4 times in 40 years, Spain told its creditors the money was gone. 4 times they promised to change. 4 times they lied. But stage 4 is where the real horror began, the stage that reveals why empires actually die. Loss of productive capacity. Here's what nobody understands about Spain's collapse. They had infinite wealth, mountains of silver, oceans of gold, and it killed them. Because when you have unlimited money, you stop making things. Why farm when you can import food? Why build ships when you can buy them? Why innovate? Why struggle? Why work when you can just spend? Spanish nobles considered labor beneath their dignity. Manufacturing collapsed, farms sat idle, and all that silver, all that wealth flooding in from the Americas, flowed right back out to France, to Italy, to the Netherlands, to England, buying wine, buying silk, buying everything Spain no longer made. Spain became a pipe. Wealth poured in one end and immediately gushed out the other. Nothing stuck, nothing grew. By 1600, Spain produced almost nothing and depended on imports for everything. And when the silver mines started running dry, when production fell, the entire system disintegrated like a sandcastle hit by a wave. Stage 5 was just the funeral social decay. Crime metastasized through Spanish cities. Beggars crowded Madrid streets. The talented, the ambitious, the creative, they all left for countries that were still building, still creating, still alive. France, England, the Netherlands. Spain was left with bureaucrats managing to decline, soldiers with nothing to fight for, and priests blessing a corpse. By 1640, Portugal was gone. By 1650, they'd lost the Netherlands, their wealthiest territory. By 1700, the Spanish Empire was a ghost haunting a graveyard. They went from masters of the world to irrelevant in 80 years. Today, Spain is pleasant, cultured, a lovely place to vacation, and utterly, completely, permanently irrelevant on the world stage. That's what imperial collapse looks like. Total, final, irreversible, 300 years pass. The world forgets the lesson, and Britain steps into the exact same trap. By 1900, Britain controlled 25% of Earth's land mass. 400 million subjects bowed to the crown. The pound sterling was more than money, it was power made liquid. Every major trade contract denominated in pounds. Every central bank holding British bonds. London was the center of everything. And Britain, like Spain before them, believed it would last forever. They were already dying and didn't know it. By 1900, British soldiers were scattered across 6 continents: India, Africa, the Middle East, China, the Pacific, the Caribbean, defending territory so vast it was almost abstract. Then 1914 arrived, and with it, a choice that would end the empire. Stay neutral and watch Europe burn, or fight and bankrupt everything to win. Britain chose glory over survival. World War I cost them 40 billion, more than $1 trillion in today's currency. They borrowed from America, from Canada, from anyone who would lend. By 1918, the empire that had financed the world was drowning in debt. But they'd won. They'd kept the empire. They thought they could rebuild. They couldn't. The pound sterling was supposed to represent gold, but the war had consumed Britain's gold reserves like fire through paper. They'd shipped it all to America for weapons, food supplies. By 1920, half the gold was gone. But Britain tried to pretend otherwise. In 1925, they went back on the gold standard at the pre-war rate, as if nothing had changed. The pound was overvalued, British exports became too expensive, factories closed, unemployment exploded. And the government jacked interest rates sky high to defend an indefensible currency, strangling their own economy to maintain an illusion. By 1931, reality won. Britain abandoned the gold standard. The pound lost 25% of its value overnight. The global reserve currency had just admitted it was a lie. Then World War II finished what the First War started. Another 120 billion. More borrowing. By 1945, Britain owed more than their entire economy produced. The war was won, but the empire was a corpse. In 1947, they surrendered India, the crown jewel, the source of wealth for 2 centuries. Gone. Over the next 20 years, the rest followed. Africa, the Middle East, Southeast Asia, the Caribbean. By 1970, the British Empire existed only in photographs and memories. The pound kept falling. In 1940, £1 bought $4. By 1980, $2. Today, $1.27. The global reserve currency became a regional curiosity. Britain kept its UN Security Council seat, its nuclear weapons, its special relationship with America. Window dressing on a museum. The empire died, and it never came back. Now the most recent collapse, the one that should terrify you because it happened in living memory, with modern technology, with nuclear weapons, with everything that was supposed to make nations invincible. The Soviet Union, 1945 to 1991. After World War II, the USSR emerged as a superpower. Nuclear arsenal, massive military, control of Eastern Europe, satellites in space, and an ideology that promised to bury capitalism and inherit the earth. For 45 years, they matched America tank for tank, missile for missile, soldier for soldier. Beneath that facade, the economy was rotting from the inside. The Soviet Union spent up to 20% of GDP on the military, triple what America spent, trying to match a country with an economy 5 times larger. They had troops in Afghanistan. They propped up Cuba. They supported Syria, Vietnam, North Korea, Angola, Ethiopia. Everywhere America had influence, they had to counter. The cost was apocalyptic. The economy stopped growing in the 1970s. Oil revenue kept the lights on, but nothing else functioned. Factories produced garbage. Farms failed so catastrophically that by the 1980s, the Soviet Union, with some of the richest farmland on the planet, was importing grain. They couldn't feed themselves. Why? Because central planning is economic cancer. Because innovation dies under totalitarian control. Because no one produces when there's no incentive, no reward, no future. The ruble was never real money. It couldn't be exchanged internationally. Soviet citizens didn't trust it. They hoarded dollars when they could get them. The government had to buy imports with gold and oil because the world wouldn't accept rubles. By 1985, oil prices crashed. Gold reserves depleted. They were running out of real money, and everyone knew it. In 1989, the Berlin Wall fell. Eastern Europe revolted. Poland, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Romania, East Germany, all gone in a single year. The satellites that gave the Soviet Union strategic depth vanished because the empire was broke and couldn't stop them. December 26, 1991. The Soviet Union ceased to exist. 900 days from the Berlin Wall to complete dissolution. No invasion, no war. Economic implosion. The military couldn't be paid. The government couldn't function. The ruble became worthless overnight. A superpower with 30,000 nuclear weapons collapsed because it ran out of money. The pattern completed itself again: overextension, currency debasement, debt, productive collapse, social decay, and then oblivion, and now it's our turn. The United States of America is on stage 5 of 7, and we're accelerating. Let me show you exactly how we're following the script. Stage 1, military overextension. We have over 750 military bases in 80 countries, troops in 150 nations. We're committed to defending Europe through NATO, defending Japan, South Korea, the Philippines, fighting in the Middle East, countering China in the Pacific, countering Russia in Eastern Europe. Our military budget is $850 billion annually, more than the next 10 countries combined, and it's not enough. We're stretched impossibly thin. Equipment is aging faster than we can replace it. Recruitment is collapsing. And we have commitments we physically cannot fulfill. If China moves on Taiwan, if Russia pushes into Poland, if Iran closes the Strait of Hormuz, we cannot respond to all of it simultaneously. We're overextended exactly like Spain, exactly like Britain, exactly like the USSR. Stage 1 complete. Stage 2 currency debasement. In 1971, Nixon severed the dollar's link to gold. It became pure fiat, backed by nothing but trust and military power. Since 2000, the money supply has exploded 400%. Since 2020 alone, we've printed over $6 trillion. The dollar has lost 98% of its purchasing power since 1971. We're not mixing copper into silver coins like Spain did. We're doing something far more insidious. We're printing unlimited paper and calling it money. The mechanism is different. The result is identical. Stage 2 complete. Stage 3, the debt spiral. The United States owes $36 trillion, 120% of GDP and climbing. Interest payments alone are approaching $100 trillion per year. We're spending more on interest than on national defense. We run deficits every single year, $8 trillion in 2024 during an economic expansion during peacetime. We're borrowing money to pay interest on money we already borrowed. That is the textbook definition of a debt spiral. Spain defaulted 4 times and collapsed. Britain borrowed until the empire disintegrated. The USSR ran out of money and vanished. We're sprinting down the same path. Stage 3, complete. Stage 4, loss of productive capacity. America doesn't make things anymore. We design, we finance, we consume, but we don't produce. Our manufacturing base has been systematically gutted and shipped to China, Mexico, Vietnam, anywhere labor is cheaper. We import $800 billion more than we export every single year. We're dependent on foreign supply chains for everything that matters: medicine, electronics, steel, semiconductors, even components for our own military. Just like Spain became addicted to imports while silver flowed out, we're addicted to imports while dollars flood out. And just like Spain, when the money stops flowing, when the world stops accepting our currency, we're going to discover we can't make what we need to survive. Stage 4, complete. Stage 5, social decay. Trust in every institution has collapsed to historic lows. Crime is surging in major cities. Homelessness has exploded into a humanitarian crisis. Drug overdoses kill 100,000 Americans every single year. The birth rate has fallen off a cliff. Our best and brightest are either leaving the country or mentally checking out. Political dysfunction is total and paralyzing. We can't agree on basic reality, much less solutions. We can't fix infrastructure. We can't secure borders. We can't build anything. The signs of civilizational decay are everywhere, flashing red, screaming warnings, and almost everyone is pretending everything is fine. It's not fine. Stage 5 complete. 5 of 7 stages finished. The Soviet Union made it to stage 5 before total collapse. So did Britain. Spain lasted longer, but the pattern was the same. We're not approaching danger. We're inside it. Stage 6 is loss of reserve currency status. When allies start diversifying away from dollars, when international trade shifts to other currencies, when all those dollars the world has been holding come flooding back home, because nobody needs them anymore. We're seeing the early signs right now. Bryce nations are building alternative payment systems. Central banks are buying gold at record rates. China and Russia are trading in yuan and rubles. Saudi Arabia is accepting yuan for oil. The cracks are forming. The dam is weakening. Stage 7 is total collapse, not gradual decline, not a gentle slide into irrelevance, sudden catastrophic implosion. The Soviet Union went from superpower to non-existent in 900 days. Britain lost an empire that took 300 years to build in just 20 years. Spain's collapse took longer, but the result was the same: permanent irrelevance. When the reserve currency fails, when the debt becomes unpayable, when the military can't be funded, it doesn't decline gracefully. It collapses violently. And everyone who thought it couldn't happen here, everyone who believed their nation was special, learns the same terrible lesson civilizations have learned for 5,000 years. It can happen anywhere. It will happen anywhere. And it's always sudden when it finally comes. 3 empires followed this pattern to extinction: Spain, Britain, the Soviet Union. Each one believed they were exceptional. Each one believed they were different. Each one believed the rules of economics, of history, of reality itself didn't apply to them. They were wrong every single time. And right now, we're telling ourselves the exact same lies. We're different. We have technology. We have the dollar. We're America. But the pattern doesn't care about exceptionalism. The pattern doesn't care about pride or history or what we believe about ourselves. The pattern is mathematical. You cannot spend beyond your means forever. You cannot maintain an empire without the productive capacity to fund it. You cannot debase your currency without consequences. And you cannot avoid stages 6 and 7 once you've completed stages 1 through 5. The sequence locks in. The ending becomes inevitable. The only question left is timing. Maybe we have 10 years, maybe 5, maybe less. But the pattern says collapse is coming, and when it arrives, it won't be slow. It'll be a currency crisis that triggers a debt crisis that triggers a political crisis. Overnight, the superpower becomes a cautionary tale. The reserve currency becomes a regional curiosity. The empire becomes a chapter in history books. 3 times it happened before, and each time, the people living through it couldn't believe it was real until it was far too late to stop. The pattern says we're next. Since 2020, we've accelerated every single stage, printed trillions, exploded the debt, extended military commitments we can't afford, hollowed out production, fractured society beyond recognition. We're not walking toward the cliff anymore. We're sprinting, and the edge is visible if you know what to look for. Maybe we'll find a way out. Maybe America can accomplish what Spain, Britain, and the Soviet Union couldn't. Maybe we'll reform, rebuild, restore. Maybe this time really is different. But the pattern says otherwise. The math says otherwise. History, which has watched empires make the same mistakes and suffer the same fate over and over for thousands of years, says we're about to learn the lesson the hard way. The cliff is ahead. We're accelerating. And almost nobody is hitting the brakes.